Quick apology for a somewhat late upload. A couple weeks ago, I bought a new laptop to help editing videos faster. But at the same time, I also noticed that Red Dead Redemption 2 was on sale. So, you get the picture. What is good, everyone? It is your guy, Don James, and welcome back to the 5 Years Later series. If you're new to the channel, I'm doing a series where I break down every billion-dollar movie from 2019 to get a sense of how well it's aged. So please, if you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe so I can continue to make these videos. Today, we're talking about Avengers Endgame, arguably the biggest movie of all time.
This is gonna work, Steve.
I know it is. Because I don't know what I'm gonna do if it doesn't.
Actually stop and think back to just how much people were dead set on not getting any spoilers to this movie. How urgently everyone wanted to see it as soon as possible. For me personally, I remember vividly where I was on opening weekend. It was a Friday at school. Everyone was talking about it, students, teachers, all just so excited to go see it over the weekend. Me? I wasn't even going to be in town. I was actually heading off to Texas because my father had a business trip. Coming back to school the following week had to be one of the most tense moments of high school. It was a true war zone of trying to avoid every possible risk of spoilers. Plugging my ears at the first sound of, "Have you seen?" Or, remember that part when it was horrifying. When I thought I was about to escape all of these gunshots, I got blindsided by friendly fire. While hanging out with my buddies, one of them just starts bringing up spoilers from the movie, assuming that I had seen it. I immediately clammed my ears shut when I heard something about Hawkeye, but it was too late. Even through my plugged ears, I heard the muffling of death. And I thought, shoot, Hawkeye must have died. Though at the same time, it's not that big of a loss, because, as I had stated in a previous video, he's the forgotten Avenger. After this video, go watch that Captain Marvel retrospect where I grilled into this sorry, wimpy, no-powered Mike Scholester wannabe recluse to son of a gun. Anyways, I got to see it during that week's Friday, and my theater was almost empty, actually. See, I was actually in an area where my theater was about to close in a couple weeks to be turned into a gym. I guess we had too many couch potatoes in that area. But nonetheless, when I got to the scene at Vormir, I felt my shoulders slump because I thought I already knew what was going to happen. Then suddenly,
Let me go.
and I then realized, oh crap, I really didn't hear correctly what they were saying, and I actually didn't receive a spoiler that I thought I received. Though if I'm going to be honest still, I would have preferred him dead than Black Widow, but hey, whatever. But share your story of where were you on Endgame's opening week, and how hard did you have to work to avoid hearing any spoilers if you saw it late? Leave it in the comments down below. Anyways, let's get to the background of this movie. So in October of 2014, Marvel announced that they were going to make 2 Avengers sequels as a conclusion to the Infinity Saga. It was pretty obvious who the main cast was going to be, so they didn't really have to go through any work trying to find any actors. But they did have to find a director. They ended up going with the Russo brothers, who they confirmed in April of 2015. This was a great choice, because up to that point, the Russo brothers were the most reliable directors next to Joss Whedon. Up to that point, the Russo brothers had directed Captain America: Winter Soldier. widely regarded as one of the best MCU movies and best superhero movies in general. And they were also in the process of directing Captain America Civil War, which would also go on to be a smash hit. So, especially after Joss Whedon's moving to the DCEU and controversies leading to his fallout, the Russo brothers were easily the best candidates. The production for Endgame was quite interesting, because it was filmed right alongside Infinity War. In fact, the Russo brothers even suggested that some days they shoot Infinity War scenes, and other days they shoot Endgame scenes. However, Kevin Feige didn't really like this idea because he thought it would get a little too complicated, so they decided to just shoot Infinity War first and then Endgame right afterwards.
Some people move on, but not us.
Most of the filming took place in Georgia, probably behind a lot of green screens, but some scenes such as Asgard took place in England, which is quite fitting actually. The VFX work for this movie was crazy. The movie has over 3,000 VFX shots, and the portal sequence alone took over a year to complete.
For movies like this with cosmic settings and larger-than-life characters, there's no better way to shoot it, and there's no better way to display it for an audience.
Also, they had to spend a lot of time on de-aging technology. Like, they had to de-age all of the original Avengers for their 2012 flashbacks. And that definitely surprised me. Can you even really tell much of a difference between Chris Evans then and now? But overall, it was a grueling period to get out both Infinity War and Endgame. Feige and Marvel Studios really wanted to ensure that they were going all in for the conclusion to their saga. Filming for Infinity War began in January of 2017. Filming for Endgame began in August of 2017. And filming for Endgame wrapped up in January of 2018. Meaning that it took 1 year to film both gigantic movies to close up their saga. Bruh, that's insane. This movie's true title wasn't actually released to the public for a long while. Initially, Endgame was actually titled Infinity War Part 2, but the studio eventually decided to leave the film untitled, even a little while after the release of Infinity War. The Russo brothers had actually decided to change the title all the way back in 2016, but they withheld it from the public because they thought the title would give away spoilers for Infinity War. They also made this decision because they wanted to remove any potential misconceptions between the two films. Feige actually mentioned that while these films shared similar elements, they would be two distinct films. And he is right about that. While Infinity War is significantly more fast-paced, action-driven, and centered around the villain, Endgame is a lot more slow-paced, drama-driven, and centered around the heroes. By the time Endgame's production was complete, it was set to be released on April 22nd, 2019, as the 22nd film in the MCU and the second-to-last film of Phase 3. To this day, Endgame is unsurprisingly one of the most expensive films ever made. Wait, Pirates of the Caribbean cost more than this? Fast X? Rise of Skywalker? Anyways, following the release of Infinity War, the hype for Endgame was monumental for about a year. Movie review channels, film theory channels, and film prediction channels all exploded over YouTube during this time period. In the final months leading up to the film, Endgame shattered numerous pre-sale ticket records. Numerous theaters were sold out before the movie was even released. Mainstream media outlets couldn't stop talking about it. Disney's stock price increased, and the entire world was basically on panic alert to avoid any spoilers. It was absolute Marvel mania.
We have to expend a lot of energy and time making sure we keep the information about the movie really controlled and focused and quiet. The pleasure that we get from experiencing movies for the first time in the theater and not having anything tipped. It's just like we want other audiences to have that opportunity.
By the time Endgame was released, it absolutely demolished numerous box office records. It broke Infinity War's previous record for the fastest film to 1 billion with just 5 days, and it broke the record for the fastest film to $2 billion in just 11 days. Less than 2 weeks. The previous record holder for that was Avatar with 47 days. Wow. So it's obvious that people around the world were eager to see this movie. But what did they think about its quality? So, without even looking at any review websites, I think it's pretty safe to say that most people loved this movie when it first came out. Many people were even hailing it the greatest superhero movie of all time. The acclaim is backed up in the numbers as well. On Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 94%, tying it for the second highest rated MCU movie. Audiences loved it as well with a 90%. IMDb gave it an 8.4, tying it for the highest rated MCU movie. And the user reviews were overwhelmingly favorable as well, with the 10 out of 10 reviews amounting to almost half of the total reviews. The 6 out of 10 reviews getting about 5.71%, and the 1 out of 10 is getting about 6%. Metacritic follows this trend with a 78 score, which is the third highest score for an MCU movie on the platform. And users gave it a 7.9. I got a comment on my last video about how CinemaScore is the most accurate and reliable, so I just decided to include them. They gave Endgame an A+. So take that for what you will. I mean, they gave every single 2019 blockbuster an A except for 2 of them, so I normally don't rely on them. Anyways, these reviews clearly show that Endgame has enjoyed widespread appeal among both critics and audiences. Moving on to YouTube channels, I wanted to look at 4 mainstream movie channels to get a sense of how this movie's aged. And as I said in my Captain Marvel video, obviously like 1 or 2 YouTube creators don't speak for an entire group of people or a general audience, but they can give a good aggregate because, a lot of people follow them and tend to like and agree with their videos. So I used Sean Chandler, Austin Burke, Film Stocked, and John Campia, as all of these guys made 2019 and 2024 rankings. So starting with Sean Chandler, who I'd say is most well known particularly for ranking movies, he ranked Endgame 3rd on his 2019 list. His biggest issue with the movie was essentially Thorbowski. However, his updated 2024 ranking had an interesting perspective to it. In his 2024 ranking, he had Endgame 2nd, and he still took issues with Thorbowski and things of that nature, but he also felt like the third act outweighed all of that.
I had a couple criticisms with this film when it first came out.
And now, looking back on it, I just remember the good stuff.
Of course, as you move into the third act, it's just the most satisfying final battle with all of these great little moments that just had my audience up cheering. They still work watching it at home all these years later.
When looking at Austin Burke's list, he was very high on Endgame in 2019. He had it all the way at the top at number 1. In 2024, he bumped it down a little bit. He put it at number 3, but that's still pretty high on the movie.
My body contorted, my brain exploded, my spirit levitated. I was feeling good. That was just before the movie.
Doesn't sound like much change in his enjoyment of it. Just maybe some of his prior favorites stuck out a little more to him over time. The third person I chose was Film Stocked. He ranked Endgame at number 1 in 2019. And in 2024, he bumped it to number 2, only behind Infinity War, which many people consider to go hand in hand anyway, which is essentially how he described it. And lastly, I chose John Campia. He's a pretty well-known movie reviewer on the platform. He did have Endgame lower than most YouTubers on the platform at number 5, but he still described it as a great movie and one that he thoroughly enjoyed, just not as much as I guess most YouTubers at the time. In 2024, he did drop it down a little bit lower than that actually. He had it down to number 7, and he mentioned in his analysis that he thinks that since 5 years have passed that more people have been able to recognize the flaws within the film, but it doesn't stop it from still being a great film. So overall, I think that majority of critics and audience members in 2019 could agree that Endgame was a fantastic film. And with all that high praise, with its clear global appeal, guess how many nominations it got at the Oscars? 1. For visual effects. And it did not even win.
You serious?
To this day, the only MCU film to be nominated for Best Picture is Black Panther, which was a great film, but Endgame is certainly considered better by most. But they didn't only select it based off of quality. We know why else they selected it, right? Right. Anyways, when looking at 2024, I did the same kind of analysis that I did for Captain Marvel, being that I used websites that ranked all of the MCU movies up to 2024, and I also used all the 2024 reviews for both Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb. So when looking at... What the heck is he doing? Never mind, whatever. So when looking at Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb in 2024, Rotten Tomatoes has a phenomenal average score of 4.63 out of 5 stars. And this is from 74 reviews. Like, that is insanely good. And on the other end, IMDb keeps up with that trend with a rocking 8.16 out of 10 stars with 44 reviews. I think this alone is safe enough to say that in 2024, people are still very high on Endgame. Though I will say that user reviews show more of the audience perspective. I think that websites are more likely to show how critics view the movie 5 years later. So for the websites, I used the same 5 reviews that I used in my Captain Marvel analysis, being Time Out, Polygon, Screen Rant, Sci-Fi, and AV Club. I just chose a sample size of the first 5 websites to show up, as I think that's probably going to show the most mainstream and highly trafficked websites. The results were slightly surprising to me, to be honest. Of these 5 websites, only Sci-Fi ranked Endgame number 1. What? Screen Rant had it ranked number 6. The AV Club had it ranked number 8. Polygon had it ranked number 12. And Time Out had it ranked number 2. Real quick, let me just say, it's criminal to not have Endgame in the top 10. Like, what movie does Polygon have at number 1? No comment. Anyways, I think that from these websites, Endgame is not necessarily as highly praised as it is for general users. While all these websites still agree that Endgame is a great film, it is not unanimously regarded as a top-tier MCU movie. When looking at the legacy of Endgame, I think the safest thing to say is that it's still universally regarded as a great movie. How great it is can vary between critics and audiences. Now, I think back in 2019, most audience members would have hailed Endgame as the best MCU movie. But I think 5 years later, what John Campea said probably rings true a little bit.
I think as a couple of years have passed now, as people go back in the glow of Endgame and the on your left portal scene, whereas I think more people are recognizing a few of the flaws in the film.
I think that the average blockbuster-loving audience member still considers Endgame to be like a top 5, top 3 MCU movie. While there still are a ton of people that do very much regard Endgame as the best MCU movie, I think a lot more audience members view it as like a close second to another MCU movie, most often being Infinity War. Like, a lot of people think that Infinity War and Endgame can kind of trade places as their favorite MCU movie, but if they had to choose, they would go with Infinity War. In fact, I actually ran a YouTube poll like a couple weeks ago. I got a pretty solid amount of responses. Certainly a lot better than my Captain Marvel poll. But anyway, I just asked what people's favorite Avengers movie was, and out of 113 responses, half of them said Infinity War, with the second being Endgame. So I do think more people consider Infinity War to be better now, but in no way does that take away from Endgame. As for critics, I think that their view of it maybe got a little bit worse because they probably are looking for a little bit different things in movies compared to audience members, but they still do enjoy the film a lot. I think another thing about Endgame is that it gained a greater amount of appreciation given how Disney, and movies in general, have been since 2019. With all of the sludge-ridden crap that Disney's put out over the last 5 years, as well as the clunky attempts to try building shared universes, I think it's made people appreciate a lot more just the amount of time, effort, and craft that went into making this long-running story in this massive shared universe.
Come on, Cap. I knew it.
The MCU, and the Infinity Saga in particular, was truly something that had never been done in cinema before. Never had there been an attempt to create such a shared universe where so many heroes with their own separate stories came together to tell one giant story. And the fact that it capped off so well and so satisfying has really made Endgame stand out a lot more as a truly significant film. Endgame showed that it wasn't just simply by chance that something so great was able to be crafted, because as we can see, the MCU is not nearly as good as it was during that period. It took a lot of time and a lot of incredible work to pull it off, and I think that's really what makes Endgame's legacy. The two hardest parts of creating a massive, sweeping, epic story is to start it and to finish it. The Infinity Saga started strong, and it finished strong.
I am Iron Man.
And I am Iron Man.
Sure, you could talk about Thorbowski, you could talk about Professor Hulk being kind of a beta, you could debate whether it could have used more action in the first two acts, you can have gripes with the fact that Black Widow died instead of Clintonian Duck-Eye Barton. You can nitpick the plot holes and merits of the time travel logic, but you can't take away just how well Endgame stuck the landing. It truly finished strong, and that's what it'll be remembered for. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to help support me in making this series. The next video up is the Aladdin remake. Be sure to check out my Captain Marvel analysis if you haven't already. I will be adding each movie that I talk about to the 5 years later playlist, so you can watch them all in order if you'd like. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you in the next video.